I'm Joey, and I'm a pup, and I love horror movies.
I'm Lauren. I'm also a pup, and I'm a huge baby when it comes to anything scary. Whenever I'm about to watch a scary movie, I have to look up all the spoilers so that I know what I'm getting into, but sometimes even that doesn't tell the whole story.
Luckily, I'm an expert, and I'm going to convince you better than the internet ever could. We'll examine the plot, go behind the scenes, and dissect everything that makes it scary.
And cool.
You're listening to Pupcorn in a Movie, Episode 10.
Why are we doing this again?
Because the warmest place to hide in the entire galaxy is a human's butt.
All right, so welcome to the podcast.
Part 2.
Part 2.
Because the last session that we recorded was the greatest conversation.
Honestly, it was the best conversation I've ever had in my life.
That's ever happened in the history.
Now nobody will know we're telling them, but they might not believe us.
Well, the recorder ate the second half of our conversation.
The best half.
About our topic, The Thing. The first half is okay.
We didn't really get to our stride till the second half.
Yeah.
But we really did have a very interesting conversation.
Yeah. So this episode will be bits and pieces of our conversation because
Kibbles and bits.
You know, we tried a new format where I sort of play fast and loose with the plot of the movie.
Just the way I like it.
And then you ask me more involved questions so that you sort of figure out the plot on your own in a way.
Yeah.
And we only the part that we started losing stuff at was like about 45 minutes into the movie. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to like replay that portion.
No, it's lost to the sands of time.
Yeah, so there'll be bits and pieces of like some funny stuff. Like if there's anything funny, like we can clip it out, or anything interesting that pertains to conversations that we have now. Because at this point, we've already watched the movie. Because the part that got lost in the recording was we did the whole movie. We finished and then we had a conversation about it. After describing the plot. So we've seen the movie.
Do you remember the themes that we were talking about?
Yeah, I have notes and stuff like that of like what I think the movie is about.
Well, I think the biggest part of our conversation was you were describing the plot, and I said, "Oh, like that movie Annihilation that we saw." That like we reference a lot on this podcast. I feel like because we both hated it.
Yeah.
And then you said,
"What did I say?"
You said, "Yeah, it is like Annihilation."
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, it's like almost like a carbon copy of the movie in a way.
That's an interesting pun.
Yes.
For the film at hand.
Yeah. So I guess maybe we should recap broadly what The Thing is about, because if we're not really giving people the plot from what we discussed earlier, they may want to know what it's about.
Forgot that nobody knows what this movie's about yet.
It's showtime.
Short version, John Carpenter, the guy who directed Halloween and Escape from New York. He made
Interview with a Vampire, which also I think we referenced that.
No, he didn't do that movie.
Are you sure?
Yes, positive.
Who did Interview with a Vampire?
I don't know who directed it, but I know Anne Rice wrote the novel.
Right, but I thought that John Carpenter was involved.
No.
Okay.
Are you getting it mixed up with Francis Ford Coppola and Dracula?
Draculia? No, I'm not getting it mixed up with that.
Okay.
Hello.
Sorry.
What do I look like? Some kind of noob? I do look like a noob.
I've only literally seen. Ever said.
I've seen like actually 3 vampire movies. 2 of them
are Twilight.
No, I did see that, but that's not what I was talking about. I meant I've seen Draculia.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen Interview with a Vampire,
mm-hmm.
and Buffy the Vampire Slayer with Christy Swanson.
Are you thinking of John Carpenter's Vampires with James Woods?
That sounds more likely.
Also a good movie.
So I wasn't so far off. John Carpenter has a vampire movie in his arsenal.
A lot of movies are like John Carpenter's and then like the title of the movie. It's always so weird to me that people do that.
Yeah, he's really relying on the marketing power.
Right, of his name, which was like, I mean, in the 70s and 80s, like the mainstream moviegoer knew so much less about movie making and who, directors were.
Doesn't John Carpenter sound like a weird like nom de plume for Jesus Cristo?
He's like, well, you can't use Jesus. Nobody will buy that.
He's like,
Johnny something.
Carpenter.
Yeah, that's it.
It's a nom de plume.
So,
Nom de gloom.
ooh.
Nice.
This movie is very gloomy. It's
so
what
are all of John Carpenter's movies, are they
It's
not?
true. It's what I like to call, instead of black and white, it's blue and white.
Yeah, a little bit of red in there.
Yeah, lots of red. So the broad strokes of the movie are John Carpenter is directing Kurt Russell in this Antarctic research station. Alien ship crash lands. This alien emerges, and it basically copies human cells, and it can replicate anything that it basically touches that's like human or organic. And it, one by one, the people at the station slowly are eaten or killed by the thing, or the humans kill each other because they're all suspecting that one or the other is the thing. And the thing is completely gross and disgusting. It's like tentacles and spiders' legs. And
You know what? Its mom thinks it's very cute.
yeah. Mrs. Thing.
Like, who are we to say?
Yeah, that's true. We also had this conversation while we were watching it that if from the thing's perspective,
Yes.
everything else might be scary and dangerous and ugly, and it's only doing what it can to survive.
Right.
Just like the humans burn it,
Right.
the flip side is that the alien is not necessarily trying to take over the world. It's just literally trying to survive.
And it reminds me, too, of Jurassic Park, Nature Finds a Way.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And the other thing we were talking about, which was tied into our conversation about Annihilation, was after Annihilation, we came home and we had a long conversation about cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Remember? And we were talking about, from the cancer cell's perspective, it's like thriving and surviving.
Right.
Thriving and living.
Because it holds at least we perceive that it holds no moral compass.
Right. If you take away the morality and the morality of mortality from it, it's literally just cells that are like particularly good at reproducing quickly.
Right.
So like from the cancer's point of view, it's a survival story.
Right.
So like that's a central part of Annihilation, is that this being can like replicate cells really rapidly, like a cancer. And I don't remember if it's explicitly talked about in Annihilation about somebody recovers from cancer. I don't remember.
There's like a recovering drug addict, and the main character has cancer, right? Doesn't Natalie Portman have cancer?
Yes, that's right.
In The Thing, the one of the last lines of the movie. So eventually it boils down to that they're not gonna let the thing escape the Antarctic Research Center, because if it gets into like the real world, it's only going to take about 3 years for it to completely decimate everything on Earth. Mm-hmm. So their plan is to burn everything and burn whatever is left of the thing, so that it can't possibly escape, because they don't want to be frozen in the ice. And then like another research team comes and it affects them, and it's like this cycle is just like repeating. And at the end of the movie, Kurt Russell and this other character played by Keith David are the only ones that survive, but it's unsure whether one or the other is a thing.
Or both. But we
Right.
don't think that Kurt Russell's.
I don't think so either. I would like to think he is, because that's like a great twist, because like you root for Kurt Russell the whole movie, only for him to maybe have been a thing the whole time, or
And just outsmarting everyone.
right, exactly. Like
Yeah.
it like maybe it latched onto him and it realized that he's a little bit smarter than everybody else, and it somehow used that to his advantage, or its advantage. Keith David says something to the effect of, "How are we going to survive?" And Kurt Russell says, "Maybe we shouldn't." So it's like this question of like, in terms of like both The Thing and Annihilation, like are we fighting this useless fight against cancer? Are we fighting it, because we want to truly conquer it, or is it the moral thing that we're after, that we don't want our loved ones to die? Because cancer is the evolutionary response to us living too long.
Yeah.
And eating things that we shouldn't, or living in environments that we shouldn't.
Yeah, living in an environment that's been like too manhandled.
Right, exactly. Like cancer's like, okay, no, you got to settle it down, and the thing could also represent that same thing.
Yeah.
Is this it's like the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
If we were around and tried to stop it, that would have changed the whole evolutionary chain of history.
Right.
So like, is it our duty to correct these things, or should we be allowing ourselves to like naturally readapt, rather than putting stuff in our bodies that then ultimately changes us to combat something, which that means we're vulnerable to something else?
Right. You know what I think is interesting too? They don't really make much mention of like their moral duty or like their obligation to humanity, why they're gonna burn this thing. It's just like nobody talks about it. It's just like, all right, this is what's happening. We're gonna burn this whole thing to the ground.
Right, like there's this kind of
And it's understood that it's for the good of humanity.
right, like there's this vague undertone of like we're gonna save the world by sacrificing ourselves.
But they don't talk about themselves being martyrs. They don't.
No. It's
There's
more
still
like they
some-
don't. It's more rather than putting themselves on a pedestal. It's to save others because they don't want to be the ones who unleash.
Well, they kind of know that
This
they're all
thing.
going to die.
Yeah, they at some point they all accept it. I think.
At some point, I think so too.
Yeah, like I don't think when Kurt Russell is in the underground generator room and then it eats Gary and the guy on skates Knowles.
Who doesn't it eat? It eats everyone.
When he throws the dynamite at the monster and ultimately kills it, I don't think he's thinking I'm gonna survive, because as the audience you see the explosions in the distance, you're like, there's no way he could survive that, but somehow he does, and I don't think he's expecting to, and that's why I think that he says, to Childs, which is Keith David's character, and he says maybe we shouldn't. Maybe he's already accepted that whether or not he's the thing, he's still gonna die. Mm-hmm. It's okay to give up at some point because the job is done, or he perceives the job to be done.
Or sort of like, if it's not one thing, it's another. It's sort of like something's going to cause the end of humanity.
Right.
Doesn't really matter if it's today or 100,000 years from now, does it?
Also, like the trauma of going through an experience like
Yeah.
that. In horror movies, we never focus on that. Mm-hmm. Like what happens after that, like the PTSD and the nightmares and the things that come with it. So I'm sure in that situation, if you were in that and you were very weak and felt like you were going to die, you'd probably just be like, let's just end it, because am I going to have to relive this?
Tired.
Yeah. And you don't know if he's taking something back with him. Like maybe the thing is laying dormant and he goes back to America and then it springs out, and then,
Isn't that the story of Thanksgiving?
My people will have pain and degradation. Your people will have stick shifts.
Just kidding. Obviously.
Thanksgiving.
Boom! Why didn't we watch this at Thanksgiving instead of Christmas? Here's another thing that we talked about in our literally most incredible conversation I've ever had. Different horror movie tropes, and like how these kind of three things all kind of stem from the same taxonomy of horror tropes, if you will. Alien invaders, like body snatchers. Zombie movies, which is like human bodies being overtaken either by some kind of like dark magic or
a lot of times it's like a
disease.
virus.
Yeah,
it's like some sort of airborne virus.
And then that sort of like overlaps with this other category of like an outbreak of a virus.
Right.
And this kind of checks all those boxes.
The thing is like a parasite.
Yeah.
But it's also...
But it uses your body against others, like, again, out of your control.
Right. Yeah, it forces you to then attack others, which then spreads the disease, and the only way to sort of test for it is like this blood test, which you would get sort of in like this outbreak.
And there's also
trope.
This aspect of you need to kill this thing at the source rather than it spread to the rest of humanity.
Right. There's like a patient zero.
I never thought about it before, that those three branches are clearly of the same tree.
Right. That like the zombie movie is not just zombie. There's like something sort of biological and cellular.
Yeah. And that it really speaks to this fear of losing control over your body and like losing autonomy of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of a deep primal fear, that really like gets to the heart of it. And I just think it's interesting that fear can manifest in I guess a lot of different ways, but these three specifically are pretty interesting.
Now, in zombie movies, the zombies themselves are a critique of human nature in some way. Like in Dawn of the Dead, they're like this ultra consumer going to the mall, like all they can do is spend money, and it's all about wealth and accumulation and objects and just like, showing how hip and cool you are by being in this place and buying these things and having these assets or whatever.
And in Shaun of the Dead, it's about being like trashy and lazy and all of that. And
like the changing British attitude after like 9/11, this sort of like, well, where do we go from here? Like we are sort of powerless to stop, quote unquote terrorism or some attack on our quote unquote freedom.
Right.
So it's like, well, why, if we can't really stop it, we're just, we could just be lazy. Like might as well just coast sort of through life, and just if it happens, it happens. Like there's no sort of quest to become more than you are. And that's like why Sean's arc is so good, because he's so dim-witted and lazy and just like whatever. And at the end of the movie, he's like this leader, but then he becomes sort of content.
He's like a zombie
again.
in his real life until he meets zombies.
Right. He realizes that they are him and he is them. And he has to like rebel against that.
Side note, we also just started watching this excellent 10-part series from Eli Roth on AMC. I forget exactly.
I think it's called The History of Horror.
I think it is called The History of Horror. It is very good.
Yeah.
Starting with the first episode on zombies. Highly recommend.
Even if you don't like Eli Roth's movies, just the way it's presented and how like lovingly he represents everything, and all the interviews that they get with all these amazing actors that probably haven't given a lot of interviews in like mainstream media before.
Yeah. It was such a great, like, sweet, touching roundup of interviews. And I also want to say that I would have never watched that if we didn't start doing this project. I would have been like, whatever.
Yeah.
It's probably scary. But it's so good. It's so interesting. So just a little plug for that.
Yeah. But that
we
really
are still accepting underwriting dollars, by the way.
From AMC.
Yeah.
But that really got sort of the conversation flowing again, because we had started watching that after we watched and recorded a reaction to The Thing. So
do you think that this movie, The Thing, is more... Well, I guess I know the answer. Do you think it's more an alien movie or a zombie movie or an outbreak movie?
I think it's actually more, alien in the sense that it's foreign.
And they literally show you the spaceship.
Right, but I don't see the thing as alien. I see it as disgustingly earthly.
Yeah.
Because it takes the form of what we know.
It's quite grotesque. And in order to feel like it's grotesque, you need to know, like, that it's a perverted version of like something that's normal on Earth.
Right. That's what makes it so creepy. Like you literally gasped in the part where he puts the defibrillator paddles into the guy's stomach and it opens up like a Jaws.
Oh my God.
And it eats his hands.
It's like somebody read the blueprints for how that creature's supposed to look and like read the IKEA assembly packet and did it all out of order.
And used like glue and like nails that you're not supposed to use.
And you're like, you really took some liberties there, bud.
Yeah. Just like all the creature designs are so unique. They're all different from each other, but all equally gross and disgusting, but so familiar, like the spider's legs, the tentacles. Right. It's all stuff that you recognize magnified.
It also like kind of begs this question of like, does God only like belong to Earth?
Right.
Like, does God invent aliens too?
Right. Like we always think of like all of God's creatures, but that also means that the disgusting thing that has clear skin at the bottom of the ocean is also one of God's creatures.
A blobfish.
Right. Yeah.
But like, I'm okay with that. It's because a blobfish is not like a subversion of life on Earth.
Yeah.
Whereas an alien creature is like, that is, somebody tried to get that right and they got it very wrong.
Yeah.
And so you feel like...
Well, what is right and what is wrong?
Well...
It just looks different to us.
Yes.
It's like, you know, when we first... Like, I'm reading
but if you
this...
have a deep feeling in your pit of your gut that you're like, that is not right.
Right.
There's something uncanny about it and it implies a godlessness, if we believe in God.
Right. Well, do you think that also ties into the theme that we talked about, is that the movie, I mean, John Carpenter said it is, but it has this undertone of not a critique, but just a reflection of society in the 80s around the AIDS virus. Mm-hmm. They have this really tense scene where they're testing each other's blood to see if they're the thing or not.
Yeah.
And also like this thing and AIDS being this grotesque monster that like a large part of society shunned these people because they thought they were quote unquote immoral or demonic or
oh my gosh. And can you believe that I just said perversion, godless, like implies a lack of earthliness,
right?
And that's exactly what people thought about gay people.
Well, that's when I heard that I was like, that really ties in, because we're watching that documentary about AIDS where people
we really watch a lot of TV.
We watch a lot of documentaries.
It's all very good though.
Yeah. Well, it all informs this because we're all learning about like we talked about it, that horror movies are rooted in the world and the time that they're made in.
Yeah.
And that's wholly apparent in all of them. You can watch like certain comedy movies and you're like, that has nothing to do with society in the 70s. Mm-hmm. It's just a funny movie. But all the horror things you can easily pick out. Because, like most of any documentary about any decade, it's like focuses all on the horrible stuff. A lot of bad stuff happens all the time.
Yeah.
And we just we pepper it with like the good things, but really a lot more bad stuff happens, and that all gets reflected in these movies.
I think also just being people that were born in the 80s, there's like some fixation with exploring like what the world looked like at that time.
Right.
A lot of the culture that we consume, you and I mean specifically, is centered around or referential to the 1980s.
I would say that. Well, you're always fascinated with the decade that you couldn't explore.
Yeah.
Because we could not explore the 80s or that much the early 90s. It wasn't, until the mid 90s, early 2000s that we could really grasp a lot of what's going on.
But you and I really listened to a lot of 1980s, like late 70s, early 80s music. We watch a lot of 80s movies. We're watching a documentary about the 80s right now. I never considered myself like somebody that was fascinated with the 80s, but it is really interesting to unpack a lot of the psychology of now and like why we are the way that we are.
Right.
And a lot of it's rooted in the 1980s in the United States.
Well, there was like a big sort of shift in the
Yeah.
80s coming out of like the post-Vietnam gas shortages, Iran hostages, everything's bad.
And a backlash to this like laissez-faire, like complete freedom
Right.
for everyone.
And then like the rise of the yuppies, the economic boom in the mid to late 80s, drugs in America, AIDS, like
I heard once that more than the bald eagle, the symbol of America should be the pendulum.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I was like, that was such a beautiful way to put it.
It
Because
never
it's so
stops.
true.
It's always swinging one way or the other.
One extreme and then it gets pulled to the other
Right.
extreme. Like we exist in a state of backlash
Yeah. It's never really neutral.
or stable.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Well, like in the Thing, they have like this the Thing starts out in the middle of the pendulum swing. They're on this Antarctic research base, 12 guys all alone. They're there for the winter. Nothing exciting is supposed to happen.
It might be summer.
Well, because when the helicopter crashes, McCready says it's the first goddamn week of winter.
Oh, yeah, you're
like,
right.
Like they just got there. Winter's just starting, and now this helicopter comes in and it explodes, and they have to shoot this Norwegian guy from this other base who they're trying to kill this dog that eventually turns out to be the Thing. So
How
like,
ironic, though, that, like, if only those Norwegians could have spoken English or vice versa. And that also brings up another 1980s point about the Cold War and not trusting people that you can't speak their language.
right, and it also sort of brings out this McCarthyism that you can't trust the guy that like Gary, who's the captain of the base. After one particular character dies, he's like, I've known him for 10 years. He's a good guy. And then in the scene earlier, he turns into the Thing and they burn him alive.
Yeah.
So it's like this mistrust of like somebody that you think you've known your whole life that turns out to be a Russian spy or
Yeah.
turns out to lead this life that you had no idea.
Yeah.
For a movie that's as gross as it is and for as much like action that it has, it really has a lot of broad points to make that it doesn't necessarily beat you over the head with. Like the blood testing scene is so tense because you the first time you're watching it, you have no idea who is going to turn out to be the Thing.
Yeah.
But like when you think about it, you're like, well, how scary would it be that you're getting a blood test for AIDS and at that point that there's no cure.
Oh, totally.
That's so horrifying. And they translated that directly to that tension that you feel
Yep.
as you're watching it. And
This movie's like quintessentially 80s in that way. Mm-hmm. But also, there's some 70s elements to it. What year did this movie come out?
82.
So right then.
Yep.
Like AIDS, probably somebody had said that word out loud maybe that year or the year before, but they thought it was cancer.
Yeah. It was something with a K.
Sarcoma?
Yeah. Carcis, Capus,
Kaposi.
Truman Caposi.
It is confusing. Say your goddamn pronouns.
Here's a question for you. If you had to write the subtitle to this movie, what would it be? Like, here's my fake one. The Thing. Getting thingy with it.
I was going to say The Thing, I'm a jig.
That's good.
The Thing, a ling.
How about this?
The Thing, how about this? That's also a good title.
I still like getting thingy with it.
Well, if we're being serious, I think the real title could have been Nothing is What It Seems.
Or like,
Who Can You Trust?
or I mean, if you want to steal Jurassic Park, Nature Finds a Way, but that's not quite right. The Thing. Is there a God?
We never really find out what the thing is,
Right.
or
It's
what
just
it looks like.
Well, any kind of parasite needs to be contained within something, within a host.
Right.
Oh, it should be like some pun about being a host. Like,
The host with the most.
yeah.
That should be the episode of the title of this episode. It should be called "The Host with the Most."
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Getting thingy with it. The host with the most, getting thingy with it.
There
That's
you go.
it.
There it is.
Meanwhile,
Something that we talked about before was in the movie they find the crashed alien ship, and then like about 100 yards away they find this block of ice that the Norwegian base had excavated, and they theorized that the alien had crawled from its ship and then froze in the snow.
Like Jack Nicholson.
Right.
Because I just happen to have 2 20s and 2 10s right here in my wallet.
Jenny! But they never explain whether or not that the thing that they pulled up was the thing or an alien that the thing had attacked,
Yeah.
and the alien in the ship forced itself to crash to kill itself, and it didn't work.
Right.
So it got out, crawled in the snow, and then froze to death. The Norwegians found it, woke up the parasite, and then it started attacking them, which is like an interesting thing that they leave completely vague. You never understand it, but it's just interesting to think about, like, is this the only thing, or is there like a fleet of these creatures coming?
2 things. First of all, I have another subtitle.
Okay.
The thing. Et tu, thingy? Second of all, more importantly, you know what you were just describing?
What?
How we were talking about Jack Nicholson in The Shining, and we never actually see the thing that possesses Jack Nicholson.
That's right, that Jack Nicholson is the ghost, and we
Yes.
only see him as the benefit to the audience. We never
Yes.
see what Jack Torrance actually looks like.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so
Very similar. The
It is
movies are
very
only 2
similar.
years apart.
interesting. Yeah, they both have a similar feel, too.
Also, they make a great use of the Steadicam to make it feel like you're kind of gliding over the sets.
Which gives like a sort of omniscient eeriness to both of them.
And the Shining is very open. The hotel's very tall, but the thing, and I mentioned this in the part that we lost, but they built the sets with ceilings, which they normally don't do, and lighting fixtures and pipes to make it more claustrophobic.
Yeah.
So it's like the same movie, but in two totally different environments, like the fear of wide open space, of sort of this freedom, and the fear of claustrophobia.
The thing. No one can hear you scream in your own mind. That's The Shining, too, I guess.
Yeah.
The thing. No one can hear you scream in space. In Antarctica.
Would you recommend this movie?
Yes, I would recommend this movie.
We should do our scale, our rating system,
Yes.
because we've already seen the movie.
Yeah.
So the first one is heckling.
It wasn't very heckleable.
No,
That's not a word you say a lot.
it's a heck of a lot of.
Heckleable.
No, it's not.
It's not funny.
No, because it's presented in a very serious way.
Yeah.
And in a believable way that you're not like, this is so goofy.
There were like maybe 1 or 2 moments where we're like, oh, cool hair. Or
Right.
like something dumb. But like, I think because it really resonated on an emotional level, especially thinking about, I don't know, the 1980s in general.
Right.
And I think while we were watching it, you made a comment about AIDS too. Something about the testing of the blood.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure I did. I think we talked about it in our initial conversation
Yeah, I
about
think
that.
we did too. Not very heckleable. Not funny. Not
No,
funny.
But not funny. But that doesn't for anybody who hasn't heard our holistic rating scale, that doesn't diminish the enjoyment of the movie, cuz
No.
some movies are good enough that they're heckleable enough that they become good.
Right.
That you'll watch it over and over because it's so good to sit there and make fun of it.
This is not that though. Was it scary? No. I didn't have any nightmares about it.
No.
But I do understand it as part of the horror genre.
Right.
I can see that.
There were 3 moments where you did gasp.
The hand one. The hand in the
The hand in the belly, because I had told you about it, but I didn't think you would realize that it was going to come and that it was going to be so.
It was
so
crazy.
It's like that you see the hands go in, the mouth closed,
It's
the
like a
arms
very
go-
Jaws thing.
Yeah, the part where the dog turns into the thing and it has the tentacles.
Oh, yeah.
Because it also makes like this awful sound where it's like. It's like these these little tentacles, and then it grows spiders' legs out of its back, and
Which is like
they have
just
like
so
a
gross.
they have this like, because they come out and they bend
Yeah.
You know, like a spider's legs would. It's just, the effects are incredible.
And the other thing that disturbed me about that is thinking about the other dogs know.
Oh yeah, the other dogs immediately know.
They're like, who the hell is this?
So what the hell is that?
You just know they're all gonna die.
I know. And kind of, not ironically, but interestingly, that the other dogs do die, but they're killed by Blair with the axe
Yeah.
when he goes crazy. And then the third part that you gasped was right after the hands go into the guy's stomach and the guy gets his arms eaten off, is that the character who is the Thing, his own morphing head comes out of his belly and then it grabs onto the ceiling and you're like, oh God. Like, it was like so gross because there's no warning at all for what you're about to see.
You're like, okay, I've seen something gross. Oh, there it even goes grosser.
Right. And then that great shot of McCready, Kurt Russell's character, looking at the camera, and then the spider, the head detaches from the body, grows spider's legs, and it's clicking behind him.
Yeah.
And when you said, oh, it looks like a Jim Henson creation.
Yeah.
And then he turns around and they burn it. And it does like that little dance because it's like on fire.
They remember.
Yeah, they remember. They did not like that. Not a good movie for dogs.
No. A lot of dogs.
Yeah. Although cute dogs.
No dogs were harmed. But a lot of dog characters were hurt.
Yes. Including the one that gets shot with like acid.
Oh, that poor thing.
Which doesn't happen again in the movie. Nobody else gets shot with acid. Because it turns into, I don't know if you remember this, but right before they burn it, it turns into sort of like a flower before it attacks Childs to Keith David's character.
Oh, I was going to say it turned into like a serpent or something.
Well, it sort of has like, it grows like these tentacles and then the head opens and a flower blooms and it's got teeth in like the center.
But how would it have seen a flower if it only landed in Antarctica?
You don't know what happened on wherever the ship is from.
Yeah.
It could have copied plant DNA, or the alien that it took over could have also been like plant-based.
This really reminds me to go back to the point of how similar to Annihilation this is. And like to the point where the guy that directed Annihilation, like 100% must have been influenced by this movie.
Right. The thing that I don't like about Annihilation is that the point that it's trying to make about cancer is so wildly disconnected from like the second half of the movie that it like loses its appeal. And I don't think anything in that movie, any of the monsters were as imaginative as the stuff in The Thing.
No,
like,
Annihilation fucking sucked.
Yeah, I hated it. That was real. Like the Uber driver was getting a real earful from us just screaming about how much we hated it.
That's typical, though. We like come home from anything. We're like, let me tell you my thoughts,
right, as
I'm processing them in real time with you in the cab. This is like very typical of our relationship.
Well, I feel like even movies that we don't like, we're like, okay, well, there was things wrong with it, and here's what they are. But I think we were honestly angry coming out of that movie of like how much potential it. Like, I've never been so angry at a movie being like, oh, this had such a great premise, and it turned out so poorly. Like, what happened?
We were pissed, man.
Yeah. I think we saw it for free though.
Yeah.
So that did influence like the $18.50 movie tickets in New York City.
New York City, get a hold of yourselves.
Like that wasn't the problem. It was really that we just like felt like we were like
I paid $0 and I still feel ripped off.
Yeah, exactly. Like we should have argued for our $0 back.
Can I get that 2 hours back?
Right. And also, I don't know if you remember, but the movie cut out in the middle of it. The projector broke.
Yeah, I do remember.
And
that.
Somebody started clapping.
Oh my God. I mean, there's worse ways to spend a hot afternoon than in a movie theater.
Right.
But
like you want to be entertained while you're there, you know? But I think that's like somebody with the idea like, oh, I'm going to make a modern version of The Thing.
I mean, they had to be they just had to.
Yeah,
it's basically the same movie.
Yeah.
Well, sort of, but
yeah, the thing about Annihilation is that the creature doesn't necessarily take over their body in a malicious way.
Yeah,
it just sort of kills them.
It's not evil. It's just a parasite without any moral
just
directive.
Naturalistic. It does what a cancer cell would do.
Right.
The thing in The Thing sort of has more intelligence because it taps into the brain of whatever it's taking over, so it can make itself look and act like a human.
It's more deceptive.
Yeah, it's certainly more advanced. It's like if cancer were allowed to grow into a physical thing that could think.
And it has a bit of cruelty to it because it uses our own intelligence against us.
Right, it deliberately tricks us.
In Annihilation, imagine if it was the whatever from the parasite from Annihilation would just take over an organism and then use it and let it die.
Yeah, use it and lose it.
It would just use it and lose it. But the parasite in the thing really wants to thrive and usurp all the resources available to it.
Right. It's very much akin to the alien in Alien.
I've actually never seen Alien.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that should be on our list because that's another science fiction horror.
And it's scarier than this, I bet.
Yes, it's much more tense.
Yeah.
But
there was one jump scare you were warning me about in this movie that I did not jump.
No, because I think as I was explaining it, it happened like in the middle of my explanation, and I think it sort of lost the potency of it.
But also compared to all the other stuff,
Oh, right.
It was like one small moment of tension in a full movie of like, there wasn't really that much tension.
No, I would say that the thing is just like the flamethrowers that they use. It's like a very fast, hot movie. It's like...
Yeah. There's no slowness to the movie. They don't really take time to build the dramatic tension.
It sort of happens before you're expecting it.
So this one little jump scare felt really out of place to me. Because it was like one little like dark shadow running across a doorway.
Right.
Which wasn't repeated or done, and they didn't have any precursor to that. There was nothing like that in the movie, really. In the
original script, there was supposed to be like a jump scare when they go to the burned out Norwegian base and they find, like the paperwork and the guy like who's had like slit his own throat. There's supposed to be some sort of jump scare there, but they took it out because they felt it would be too cheesy.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to scare people to make a scary movie.
Totally.
And I think that's what the movie does so well is that the horror of it is not that the monster jumps out, it's that you see the monster transform.
Or
like in real time.
If you're already infected by the monster.
Right, like in the first part in maybe up until like 45 minutes into the movie, that's not your fear, but it becomes it. It's like this evolving, this nice arc.
Yeah.
Cuz like in some movies it's like, oh, in the first 5 minutes you're like it's Godzilla and then it's Godzilla the whole movie.
Right.
But this movie, it's like, okay, well, it's something weird that like attacks people. But now, not only do I have to be afraid of this superhuman creature itself, but I also have to worry that the guy next to me is one of them, and I can't tell that.
Right.
That's really frightening. And again, that ties into the whole AIDS thing. It's like, and the McCarthyism. Who is this person next to me? All of a sudden, I need to know more about my neighbor than I thought I did. You can't just wave hello in the morning and say like, "How's your lawn doing?" You have this dark need to know every aspect of him to make sure, or her, to make sure that they're clean, quote unquote, that they're sterile, that they're by the numbers.
And the thing that, for better or worse, ties all humanity together tenuously at times is that we all look the same. And if you believe in this Judeo-Christian tradition, we are all supposed to be formed in God's image. So if I'm formed in God's image and this thing is formed in my image, but it's a weird perversion of that, then there's like inherently something really evil and untrustworthy about that. Whether or not, like if you take the morality out of it and it's just some other creature trying to survive, but it feels more inherently cruel than that.
Right. What if the alien...
It feels like trickery. It feels like manipulation.
What if the alien is like a metaphor for God itself, herself, hisself, whatever, that it's sort of forming in our own image, but is here because it's unsatisfied and wants to kill us?
Maybe.
Like that's God's plan to wipe us out. Like if you believe in that, a flood or a tsunami or a volcano is an act of God, then why can't this also be an act of God?
Yeah, it's a good question.
And that also brings up this deeper fear, like if somebody's out there controlling the puppet strings, what chance do we have?
And also that thing where people are like, when something great happens, they thank God for doing it to them, or when something terrible happens, they curse God for doing it to them. So if God's a puppeteer, like God's putting all of Earth in this like terrible situation.
If you take that angle, God is very much a director watching his own movie, and you have to have a little bit of excitement in a movie to draw your attention, and that's where disease and death and all that comes in. But you also need hope, which is like somebody surviving that and having a baby that grows up to do something amazing. If we're made in his image, then he has the same neuroses and problems that we do, which means that he has to consume the same amount of sort of interests that we do.
I'll tell you what, I did not expect this conversation to be about God as much as it has been. But
well, playing God, like
yeah.
Again, that the outbreak movies, curing disease. How do we survive? Should we? Should we
sort
even?
of this idea of hypervigilance is like a godly impulse, right? Like you want to control everything,
right?
And the minute that you drop your guard is like when some evil creeps in,
right?
That's like what evangelical thought is, right? Is it not? As soon as you like stop being hyper aware and hyper in control. And I guess when you put some scientists in the middle of nowhere, it's like very difficult to maintain a control environment.
Right. It's like sending astronauts into space.
Yeah.
It's like putting anybody in a confined area, a prison even, the evolutionary chain breaks down eventually, because if you deprive these people of what they know and trust, eventually they're going to turn on each other. It's like,
also the arrogance of like putting humans in an environment that's beyond their control and assuming that they're going to be able to control it.
Not only putting them there, but the people who think that they can go there to survive, like that sort of like arrogance, that like
this hubris,
right? That like I can conquer any sort of challenge in that way.
I think there's a lot of deep material here. I'm not sure if John Carpenter intended it, but we're sure. We'll see what he says.
Yeah.
See what he thinks.
Maybe he'll call in. Call in now.
Oh my God, that would be amazing.
Call our cells. You have it.
So sorry about that crack where I said that you probably look like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo.
He'd probably take that compliment.
I mean, I don't know what he looks like.
Okay, well, I'll show him to you.
You know what?
I'll show you to him. Maybe it's backwards.
We'll just meet him for coffee.
2 hours later.
The last rating, though, is you did heckling. You didn't give a number though.
Oh, right. Out of 10?
Yeah.
2.
Okay. 2 on the heckle scale.
2 on the heckle scale. What's the next one? Scary?
Yeah.
4?
I mean, you can say disturbing is also scary, or like
really
gross.
That disturbing. It didn't linger with me in like a nightmarish way.
Yeah, it provokes more thought than it does fear.
Yeah, I agree. It's not really scary.
Yeah.
And what's the other thing that we rated on?
How good the movie was.
Oh, 10. Great. It was awesome.
Mm-hmm. We've done very few movies that aren't like. I think we've chosen movies that are
you're
enjoyable.
Choosing them.
Well, but I choose them because I think that you'll like them.
Yeah, you're
so I
right.
think that, but it's also that you're open to watching more. So like we're sort of both contributing to that.
Yeah.
Every movie that you like allows me to open the door for other types of movies.
You're like Netflix in that way.
Yeah, yeah. I'm recommending things now.
You're like, you may also like.
When we turn on Netflix, we're like, you're not gonna like that. You're not gonna like that. You're not gonna like that.
I'll just call you Joe Flicks. Or Net Joe.
Net Joe sounds like it's an internet cafe.
I think it sounds like a basketball playing golden retriever.
Oh, Net Joe.
It's like the sequel to Air Bud.
Airbud Y2K9. Net Joe.
Air Bud. It's like actually earphones. But they're in the shape of dogs.
Yeah, I like that.
Oh my God. Somebody write that down. That's an amazing idea.
When you put them in your ear, they go, ruff.
And they have like dogs on them.
Yeah,
so that's
really
why they're
good.
called Airbuds.
Airbuds. I like that.
Oh my God. I can't believe this doesn't exist.
I know.
God damn it.
That's perfect.
So mad I said this out loud on the radio.
on old time radio.
On live American radio.
I know.
Oh, there goes my $1 million idea.
All right, so I guess we should end this episode by playing our reaction to The Thing.
That was my foot.
Oh, sorry. How do you know that wasn't the Thing
I
sound touching your
scared.
foot?
That's why I got scared. You just touched my foot.
So if you enjoyed this conversation, then you'll probably enjoy our heckling, our minimal heckling, because the movie wasn't
I haven't heard the reactions
super
yet.
heckling. I know. That's going to be a treat for everyone.
Okay,
Because
great.
usually you hear it in the next episode.
That's true.
So the next episode, we'll start fresh. We'll be back to our original sort of format, but trying out the less details on the plot scene by scene, more of you sort of interacting by asking questions and trying to deconstruct it from there, which I think worked really well.
Thanks, Joe.
It was a great idea.
I think you did great too.
Oh, thanks. All I did was watch the movie, though.
That's true.
Okay, let's play these reactions.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. David Foster Wallace worked on this? But he was only going by David Foster at the time?
Yeah. It was before he got married to Wallace and Gromit. Wallace and Islet.
Who's Wallace and Islet?
Islet is like...
Oh, I got it.
Yeah.
I know what a grommet is, too.
Mm-hmm.
Oscar, why don't you just sit back and watch this movie about a dog being executed? Okay, so if that dog is an alien, though, like, why can't it turn into something else, like a helicopter? No way that he would just, like, pop out wearing 2 t-shirts. And no face gear. It's Antarctica, bro!
In the summer.
It's not Vermont. Oh, God. What the hell was that?
Here, hold my J&B.
This movie was underwritten by J&B. Sponsored by J&B.
Every scene, they pretty much drink alcohol in.
He looks like, Masterson. Chris Masterson? Danny Masterson?
Danny Masterson. Scientologist and rapist.
Noted Scientologist Danny Masterson. Also looks like Mark Ruffalo.
And he looks like Mark Ruffalo and Michael Pena.
Yeah, he does. How weird.
Yeah.
You put on your roller skates just to say that?
Mm-hmm.
He looks like Justin Theroux.
Yeah.
Now we're recasting this if it was being made 2018.
Yeah.
Mekhi Phifer.
Right. Danny DeVito on stilts.
Mm-hmm. Patton Oswalt on the left.
Yep. Louis C.K.
Yikes. That's Louis C.K. for sure.
Yep.
Or the guy from Shaun of the Dead.
Oh, yeah. Simon Pegg. Yeah, you're right. And Kurt Russell, again, that we would just recast him.
Kurt Russell is Kurt Russell.
Yeah, you can't.
The only person I could see maybe is like Ashton Kutcher, maybe. But
I could see. I don't know. I think he could grow his hair like this, but
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Well, I was gonna say Josh Brolin.
Oh yeah, totally.
But I don't know if he
He's
has
a little
wavy
too
hair.
old, though.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, he's getting up there.
Josh Hartnett, maybe. That guy really looks like Justin Theroux. Especially with his cool rock and roll vibe.
South of the border, here we come.
They already are so.
I know, but he's wearing a sombrero.
Well, that can't be good.
What?
The black smoke.
Yeah, set her down right there in the smoke. No, these aren't lottery tickets. Kurt Russell also has, like, I don't know if they put makeup on his eyes, but he has a very like, jutting brow, so it makes his eyes look almost like black. There's, like, a lot of shadow on his eyes.
Yeah, they're almost feminine.
Yeah. Yeah, like, very cat-like. Or, like, very oval.
Yeah.
Oh, no, they found out. All right, who wants barbecue?
Nothing wrong with this Norwegian, physiologically anyway. No drugs, no alcohol, nothing.
Nice thighs. I mean, I'm no doctor, but they seem to be normal.
I mean, except for this head melting off of its head. They got doobies in Antarctica, too.
Smoking doobies. With my brothers.
Oh, sick. Get me out! It looks like a giant tapeworm in a butt. We got him with the juice.
Hey, it smells like juice in here.
Flamethrower? That's excessive. This isn't really a very heckly movie. Except for that hat. That's like Pharrell's hat at the Oscars. Or whatever, at the Grammys.
The Grammys sounds like it's an award for old women.
Which it is.
And the Grammy goes to Best Sweater. We have no formal mountain climbing training, but let's just go down there.
We don't even have guns.
He's wearing that hat like he doesn't know how to wear a hat. Like a thing from another planet.
Yeah, like he's the thing.
Right.
Oh no.
If this were real life, the guy who was looking through that stuff, he probably would have farted when that guy left the room. He's like, oh, I'm alone now. And the thing would have been like, no, sorry, I don't want to infect.
The thing would have been like, that's disgusting.
That's gross.
That guy's played by Dustin Diamond.
Oh my god, yeah, you're right. Sorry, I had a Jell-O accident.
I keep thinking, ooh, Kool-Aid.
If this is what it was like to be a scientist in the 80s, it must have been cool to be a scientist. You got guns, flamethrowers. You don't have to do any real work.
That's a scientist now, really?
Only the Thing would say something like that.
Hey, you guys, come here!
Oh, God. Ah! Holy moly. Wow. Wow. He's so mad. But the head's so alive, you guys. It's under the desk. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh my god, it's like a Jim Henson's Muppet.
Yep.
Holy shit.
This is all a misunderstanding. No.
Sorry about all your board games.
Checkers!
I was wondering where Mekhi Phifer was.
Thanks for ending that.
I said, the end!
This is everybody's favorite part of the show, where I plug my books. I'm actually very proud to announce the release of my new novel, not the scary one, but a new one called Termination Dust. It's inspired by Jack London novels and the Old West portrayals of Alaska and Canada in the 18 and 1900s. It's available in Kindle and hardcover. It's actually my first hardcover book. You can get either version through my website, notyourplatypus.com. That's notyourplatypus.com. I'll also have links in our social media and in the description of this episode for you to buy the book. As always, you can also pick up a copy of my horror novel below by also going to notyourplatypus.com. How do we want to sign off? We got to come up with like a sign off.
Oh my god. I feel really unprepared.
Maybe we should just end it. Like, now.
Now.